Hey, what's going on, guys? In today's video, we are going to start working on Bandai's perfect grade Millennium Falcon model kit. I previously did an unboxing video for this, and if you haven't seen the unboxing video, you can go back and check that out. If you have seen it, then you know that this is a lot of kit that we're getting into, and so this is probably going to be a lengthy series of work in progress on this, but I think most of the construction and painting of it should actually be fairly straightforward, just because a lot of the construction is like exterior sections with like a bunch of detail parts plugged into that, and then you can just kind of paint over it. Most of the model is basically gray, different shades of gray, and there's a couple little bits of color here and there. So I think painting the exterior should be, like I said, not the most complicated thing in the world. There's not going to be like a lot of masking or anything like that involved. The construction is also, of course, not going to require any like seam line removal or any sort of like major modifications or anything like that. I think a lot of the most complicated paint work is probably just going to be for the inside of the cockpit, which I do plan on painting the characters in the inside of the cockpit. And so that's where actually the construction begins on this. We will be following the construction order that's laid out here in the manual, and it actually starts with the cockpit and then moves to the horns at the front of the Millennium Falcon. I do already have all the parts here cut out and prepared for the first couple of steps of assembly, so let's go ahead and get right into it. And so yeah, technically speaking, the first step the manual goes over is just like checking the LEDs and like plugging the LEDs all in together, but then we go to the cockpit assembly and starting with basically just kind of choosing who you want to be in the seats. So there's 4 seats in total. So of course you have Han and Chewie, and then in the back you have here Luke and Obi-Wan, but then you do also have C-3PO and Princess Leia here included, so I'm not sure who all I want to include in the seats there. It does seem a bit of a shame to have to choose, but unfortunately that's just how the layout is. But I think for the purposes of the video for right now, I'm not going to put those in because, like I said, the inside of the cockpit here, because the next step goes to like the console there, and then you have these parts which kind of form the interior space of the cockpit. And this whole section here basically is what we're going to build. This is what I was saying is I think going to be the most complicated part to paint, because this also includes this part right here. It's actually a clear part for the back of the cockpit, and that's because the LED light will shine through this. And so I think I need to paint a few of these parts in like a different clear colors, and then like a black enamel over the top of that so that I can, you know, basically do a reverse wash, and then we'll see the light coming through and we'll have all these lights lit up and everything in here. So like I said, a little bit more complicated paint work for inside the cockpit. So I'm going to put that off for the moment. As once that's installed there, we do also have an option part here for the canopy, whether you want to just have a canopy frame here that's like this without any actual like clear, what would be glass or whatever. And then part A4 is a fully clear part that then you would have to mask in order to have like the frame around that. So for right now, while I work on getting some of these internal cockpit parts like planned out and ready for painting, we can just start on some of the construction here on the first of the 2 horns at the front, which are not going to require nearly as much planning or complex painting work. Not that the cockpit is particularly complex, but this section of the build is basically just gluing a whole bunch of parts onto here. So let's go ahead and start out with that, as that'll be a lot easier. Now you'll see that I'm gluing everything, but I should mention that so far nothing really needs to be glued, and I think most of this kit, nothing really needs to be glued on it. It's all just like kind of snap fit. I'm just gluing everything just, you know, just to make sure that everything is all nice and glued down very well. But you do have a lot of these little teeny tiny, very thin pieces like that from the couple runners that you may have seen in the unboxing video, where the runners were made of a little bit kind of more flexible plastic rather than just kind of the standard mix of polystyrene that everything else is. And for these really little parts, definitely going to have to use some tweezers here, because like this one, I'm just kind of having trouble getting in there. But I'm just gluing everything just because I basically just like the smell of the glue. No, but just because we have all these little detail parts and everything, and just on the off chance that something might want to decide to fall out, or I might bump it or drop it or something later and a little piece is gonna fly out. I don't know, just out of an excess of caution. But you can see basically this section that we're making here is just these recessed detailed areas here in the front, and so it's gonna be on the top and the bottom. That's why this piece has a top and a bottom side. We're gonna be adding parts in on there, and this will be set inside the larger pieces there. And the really cool thing about this too is that for each stage of the construction, it gives you just kind of like a top-down view too, just to kind of make sure you have everything in the right place. It's also a good way to just kind of double check that you put all the parts there, so you can sort of cross-reference your construction, make sure it looks like that. Like here, for example, I can see I didn't have this part here, D12, that circular part in there yet, and there's also a hole there, so that also should kind of tell you that something's missing there. And it's so crazy that on a kit as big and as complex as this is going to be when it's all said and done, just with all the details on it, that you have parts as tiny as this teeny tiny little part in here that just fits right into there. And again, don't want to push anything and break it. Pop that in, and that just makes that little bit of raised detail that you see sticking out there in the middle of that part right there. All right, and so with that, that is this section done. The top and bottom detail here for, again, this just kind of recessed section in the front. Now we're gonna set that into here with some more detail parts around on the sides and on the top, and just kind of adding more detail parts everywhere. So first of all, got this part that fits on the side of there like that, and then this whole part should fit onto the side of here like that. I think that's right, like that. So we have this front horn section mostly done without just adding a few more bits here onto the outside. And here's again where we're going to be using some of these very delicate parts here. These you're going to just want to be really careful with. Now, fortunately, like I said, they're made of this kind of more flexible material, so they're not going to be very prone to breaking, but you can definitely break them. And this is like one of the slightly thicker ones. There's kind of a little bit thicker and a little bit thinner ones. This is actually one of the little bit thicker ones. There are ones that are actually thinner than this too. So you're just going to want to be really careful. And again, it's great to have this top-down view to kind of see where these pieces all fit. You can just refer to that, honestly, but if you do just want to kind of take it step by step, adding only a few pieces at a time, you just kind of follow the manual as normal. And so that's our details here added onto the one side. Now, before we add them onto the back side, we are gonna go around here on the side. And as you can see, all these little holes in here, there's a bunch of these little detail parts and a lot more of these little, like, very thin pipe parts here, pipe or hose kind of parts that go around here on the side as well. A lot of little tiny, very delicate detail parts that go around on the side. Stuff like this piece, things like that. I mean, these are just so thin and so delicate, you're going to want to be extra super careful with these for sure. And there's even more of these piping bits here on the other side. And what's really cool is that you see, like in the recessed part where we just put together those little holes there, a lot of those holes are just for parts of this piping to actually fit into once we put this into place here. But all right, once we've got those in place, love all that detail in there. That is one horn section all done. And then I think I will just go ahead and put the other one together here. It's going to go very similarly, just, you know, obviously it's different detail. They're not symmetrical at all. Nothing is really symmetrical on it, except I think maybe the cannons on the top and bottom will be, those ones will be the same, I think. Maybe we'll get to that much later, but process for the next section is going to go basically exactly the same. We're going to make these, add all the detail parts here on this internal recessed section, and then we'll put together and add all the detail parts on the outside of that, and then we'll have our 2 horns done. Let me go ahead and work on this here. All right, and so there is the rest of the construction there on the second of our 2 horns here. So just to see these side by side, here's how those are gonna look. Obviously the detail on there is just insane on these, and I think that's where I'm gonna call it here for today's video. That's a good start for us. And I was thinking of putting some primer on here straight away. I'm gonna be using a black primer on this, of course, but I think before I do that, I'm gonna hold off for the moment just because I'm not sure if I'm going to want to add maybe some more texture to this surface here in a couple spots, maybe some like a carbon scoring, as it were. That's something, of course, that could be done again later, like after putting on primer, but I might as well just do it ahead of time. So I'm going to look into that we might want to do that before getting some surface around that. So we'll cover that in the next video. And primarily the next work in progress is just going to be on the cockpit. So I'm going to finish preparing those parts and kind of planning out how I want to paint everything, because the different sections kind of need to be painted in different ways. There is like a water slide decals here for inside the cockpit that I just don't think that I'm going to use, because if you look at these parts, you can see it's all molded detail there. And so the water slide decals will give us like the colors, but they're just going to be decals that you're trying to fit over all this raised detail. They're just not going to want to lay flat. So the better route is just going to be to go ahead and paint this. I'm not going to paint like every single teeny tiny little detail in here in a different color, but that's what I mean where I say that different parts are just going to have to be painted in different ways here for the cockpit. And then for our pilot figures, I'll have to decide who's going to make it into the cockpit. Let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think? Who should I have in the cockpit? I guess it just sort of depends on kind of which scene you want to portray from the film. I am kind of partial to wanting to put C-3PO in the cockpit just because I'm a C-3PO fan, but also just because I think him painted in gold there would be pretty cool to see in the cockpit as well. But let me know in the comments, who should I have in the cockpit, and what do you think of the kit so far? It's really impressive just building these first couple of sections. I mean, all those little parts for all that little detail in there is crazy. So if you're looking forward to some more work in progress on this, make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss any future episodes. I'll try to have these at least once a week for the next few weeks until we're done with this project, but it is going to take a while, of course. If you guys want to check out some more Star Wars model kits for yourself, of course, you can check the link in the video description to us at Gundam Store. We've got a lot of really great model kits there from Bandai in this series. They're definitely a lot of fun, so I highly recommend them. Now, this is obviously the most complex, being a perfect grade, but there is much smaller versions like the vehicle model series, and then there's like, I think it's 1/44 scale is the kind of like in between, and then you have some of the larger ones, but really cool so far. That's it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next work in progress video soon. Later.